This video was brought to you in part by the supporters of the AMTV Patreon. Thank you. Hello everybody and welcome back to AMTV Radio. This is the podcast where I'm joined by a very special guest each time and we chat about whatever the hell we want to, quite frankly folks. And this time I am joined by horror hostess, drag queen, makeup designer, a whole bunch of things that we're going to talk about. I'm joined by Bunny Galore. How we doing?
Oh, hi Adam. Happy Halloween. Well, early Halloween, I suppose.
Happy Halloween. This is going out on Halloween week, so you're...
Oh, there we
timely.
go.
It's timely.
Osmosis. I knew. I just knew this. I operate at Halloween.
If I'm getting a horror hostess, it has to be out on Halloween week, right? That's how it has to roll. So, yeah, well, thank you for coming aboard. And before we really get into things, I'm sure some of the listeners will be aware of yourself and your work, but maybe for those who aren't, you just want to tell us a bit about yourself and what it is that you do? Sure.
I do a lot of things badly and some things well. I am probably best known. Bunny Galore is best known for being a horror movie host on Sky Channel. The program's called Bunny Galore's Movie Nightmares. I host really bad, silly movies from the 50s and 60s because most of my friends go, "Oh, I don't like horror."
Yeah.
They're not really that horrible because I wish I actually got to host really good movies that were scary. Instead, they're actually more kitschy and silly. They're about as scary as I get is The Night of the Living Dead, but I host other things like The Brain That Wouldn't Die, The Wild Women of Wongo, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians.
The classics.
The classics, yeah. All things that are free, basically. So I host those movies. It's kind of propelled me into a different world of film conventions and Comic-Cons and Horror-Cons and things like that. Although the look of Bunny Galore is quite kitschy and silly and campy, it's kind of a bit... I describe it, it's a bit... Imagine if you remember The Monsters, the TV show The Monsters.
Yes.
I'm Marilyn in amongst all the other monsters. That's how I envision it.
Sure.
That's actually a better way of describing it as probably anything else is. But yes, I also perform on cabaret scenes. I was very well known for doing burlesque shows. Now I've been taken away by the tidal wave of drag brunches that you get in Soho and everywhere else. So I'm doing drag brunches and things, and I host movies live. I did Mrs. Doubtfire last week. So not always horror. It was beginning to... My last series was actually film noir, which is a very posh word for black and white.
It is, isn't it? When you think about it.
Basically, yeah. So I do musicals and I do comedies now as well. Apparently, that was the last series. So yes, I'm kind of and obviously, and also I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. Although my output of the media I create isn't to do with Doctor Who. That's
sure.
I've been meaning to. I also host a drag loose women style talk show on YouTube, although we got taken out by the second and the third lockdowns, and then we've not really been able to get back together again since, really, because we've kind of scrambled, because then when everything came back we got really busy. And one of our cast members is on season 3 of UK's Drag Race, so that's kind of taken.
Exciting.
So Kitty Scott Claus, Ophelia Love, Mahatma Candy and Vanity Bungalow and myself are we do the show, but Kitty's on season 3, so it's a bit like, well, we're not going to really be able to get back together again for a while. So
that's ace. And I suppose it's one of those shows, like obviously when it's just one-to-one, I guess, like doing a podcast like this over the internet isn't as bad. But I guess with one like that where it's 4 or 5, you really do need that.
And I didn't want
to
during lockdown 3 back in January and February. You remember when it was really bleak? I was trying the idea of doing it virtually. And because everybody else was doing it virtually at that point, I was thinking we're just going to get lost in the sea of stuff, and I thought I didn't like it. Kind of works better when it's one-to-one. If you've got 5 very quite big personalities talking over each other, that's you can kind of, because it was never live, it was always edited. It was post-edited, and believe me, it was like picking your way through a forest at the best of times. Trying to replicate that live would have been a problem, and I just thought I just can't see how it would work. And then actually that's when not that, obviously I didn't know this officially, but Kitty was filming season 3 anyway, so we couldn't do it really because that was filmed back in March. So so
you just lose something, I think, because I think this was back in lockdown 1, the panel show Have I Got News for You? They were still doing it, but it was like the hosts were on screens in like either different rooms or in that home, and it didn't
it's
work.
Hard to time the comedy, isn't it?
That's it, yeah, and it just fell a bit flat, and you sort of thought, this is a bit of a shame. So I think, maybe that was the right course, like wait until. So you think maybe sometime, maybe later this year or next year, you'll get it going again?
I hope so, yes. I think when things calm down a bit, we will do, which is scary because I think we've just hit the point where we started filming this time last year, and I think I was in edit. I actually posted this on Twitter yesterday, that we were in edit of episode 1 yesterday.
Mad.
A year ago, which is mad. When did it become that? But you kind of forget that we kind of lost so much time, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, Adam, but I didn't feel very artistically inclined during any of the lockdowns. I did one talk show, my own. I think right at the beginning, it was a theatre one. I did one episode. And then when we realised that theatre wasn't going to come back anytime soon, I was like, well, it's no point doing episode 2. People will just be crying. So it's going to be like...
I'll just be...
I won't bother doing that again. So when Loosely Baked was a better... But Loosely Baked came in that window that we had about 2-3 months where it was...
Yes. Just out of summer, and, like September-y. Yeah.
And even then, I think when we filmed, we did it in 2 blocks for 5 episodes. But even when we filmed, because it's quite a complicated setup filming-wise, trying to replicate live TV with 2 spanners and a Jaffa cake. It's it's a bit hard. My Paul Turner, who's one of my cameramen I work with a lot, director and sort of a videographer and editor, can make things look incredible, and I still don't know how he did it, because basically it is just us in a room, but somehow he just made it look really, really cool, more than, because otherwise it would probably just look like a podcast recording, which is fine, but not when you've got 5 close-ups to do, and it's stuff like that, which is nothing wrong with a live podcast recording. That's kind of what it was, I guess, but it's got to look more expensive anyway. So hopefully sooner than later we'll get back to that. But I've been meaning to do, during that 3rd lockdown, I wanted to do a Doctor Who YouTube show. And then I was completely stuck, because I was like going, what would I do? Because everybody else does it so much better. There's so many people out there that do it really, really well. I thought unless I'm surrounded by 5,000 character option figures here, and the DVDs and the Blu-rays. But that's about it. I thought, what am I going to do? Just get each action figure out and talk about that, dressed like, Carmen Miranda. That's about as extra as I can be, because Matthew does that really great review show, Review of Death, and there's so many really good YouTubers about the Doctor Who subject. I'm just going to look like a... And then, weirdly, I started working on the fringe of the show with Doctor Who Time Fracture, and then I couldn't say anything about it, because you're kind of NDA'd. You kind of, you would, any show that you work on, you're kind of signed up to it anyway. So
submitted into silence.
Yeah, exactly. So you couldn't really. I suddenly had to be quite quiet about it, and I did sort of say that I was doing it, because I thought that was well, when would that ever happen? So for listeners, yes, I'm also, my day job, when I'm not being Bunny Galore, is a wig person on West End musicals. This year, I've kind of shifted more into hair and makeup, and the difference being is, on a West End show, you have thousands of wigs that need to be redressed every single day for every single show, to take them back to zero, to take them back to where they should be, and then the cast will wear them and it makes a cast of 6 look like about 160 different people.
Yes,
that's the quickest way. More than a costume change, a wig will change a look. However, when it comes to TV and film, you're kind of doing... Obviously, you're much more close. You can't have the lace fronts that you can get away with on stage, which is one of the perpetual problems of Drag Race, because things you can get away with on stage. You have things like TV lace and film lace, but they only last a little while because it's so fragile compared to the lace that you'd have on a drag queen would wear, or that you buy on a wig on Amazon, which is still fine from a distance, or you cut it right back, but it's not. You can't use that on film. So you tend to work with hair more than anything else on film and TV. So out of the blue, back in April, just as we were coming out of lockdown, I got offered 2 jobs at the same time. One of them was the Doctor Who live show, the Doctor Who Time Fracture show, which I had no idea what it was. Oh, and like any other fan, and I'm saying that because I think a lot of people don't quite grasp what it is, and I don't blame you, because I didn't know. It's a live, interactive, immersive theatre thing. Which, if the audience is unaware of that, that's kind of the cast members will talk directly to you. Now, I had worked at the London Dungeon as an actor 20 years ago, and I knew what that was. They just didn't call it immersive then. They hadn't invented the word yet. But that's what it is. Obviously, it's a lot posher than that. It's a lot, it's a much more multi-layered. It's not as comedic as the London Dungeon is.
Sure.
And although I think the Dungeon probably is much more scripted than it used to be when I was there, that taught me everything you don't learn at drama school, which is like, you're kind of taught to be. You might do a bit of promenade theatre, but you're not used to talking directly to an audience member down the barrel of the gun. So that taught me a lot of things 20 years ago that I kind of still do now. But I think now, unfortunately, it's very scripted. So you kind of... This is much more free and easy, though, because a lot of it is scripted, but then a lot of it is much more you react to the audience. But I wasn't prepared for when I walked in, because when I got the job, I thought it was like, oh, is it like the Doctor Who experience? Is it going to be like dummies and things like that? And I'm going to do the hair, the wigs for the dummies. Okay. And then literally the next day, they announced the 42 cast members. In fact, 43, because Sam Hunt came in later on. Sam is a great Doctor Who fan, so he's he very. He'll be
loving life.
Oh my goodness, there's quite a few fans on the show as well. There's a, and that was the weird thing. So walking into it, I suppose I could talk about it a bit now because it's been and gone and now coming back.
Absolutely.
So season 2 starts soon, kids. Watch out. It was like, it's the most surrealist thing, walking into basically the inside of your head.
Yes, yeah.
I can't
there's so many characters and settings.
Oh my goodness.
Is it 17 different stories or outcomes or
it's a bit like you're probably too young to remember the Colin Baker Sixth Doctor Make Your Own Adventure paperbacks that they used to have in the mid.
I think I've seen them in a glass display case.
Well, it's where I should be, darling. Really, it's a glass display case. But I never used to have them, even though I obviously was a teenager during the Colin Baker years. I wasn't. I never had those books, but I remember thinking, "Oh, that's quite funny." That's kind of what you're doing. You're kind of it's not as like roll the dice and you kind of end up in a locked store cupboard. And it's kind of a bit escape roomy, and I only use that because people know that now. I think escape rooms. Yeah,
well, the whole print isn't it about going through the time fracture and then
yes. So I would say What I will say, there's 4 acts. Act 1 is where you start and you go into the time fracture, and then you go forward and backward in time. Act 3 is a sort of a space station, because that's kind of quite there's a lot of footage of that being around. If you watch West End Live with the singers, that's where that's Act 3. Act 4, I won't spoil that, but Act 4 is mind-blowing. So the weird bit was but it's not like a set or an exhibition where the sets are kind of 3-walled, like the way they used to shoot Doctor Who, which is a 3-walled set, like a theatre set. So it's got the 4th wall is the cameras, or the 4th wall is the audience. This is all around you. So you're literally walking into the worlds. And it's that, just walking around on my first day was like, oh my word, what's going on? This is madness. Less alone when you started putting the people into costumes and hair and makeup. But what I will say is, I never saw it properly, so I'm quite excited. I've left the show now because it closed down because of this flooding, which I'll tell you the story in a second. And I thought I wasn't really sure if it would come back or when it was going to come back, and I had other offers coming in, so as it turns out, a lot of things have happened since then. So I reluctantly left it, and a lot of people have. Some people have stayed because it was quite a big gap. But I'm overjoyed it's coming back because I get to see it for the first time.
Yeah, just on about the big gap, sadly. People say, oh, why would you leave it? Job of a lifetime. But sadly, in this industry, no matter what, whether you're an actor, designer, makeup, it's long gaps. We don't like that in this industry. We don't like long gaps.
If other things hadn't come, I literally shot a new series the day I didn't know this was going to happen, but I was filming a new series the next day after the flood, or the day the flood happened, because it was the day of the football final, and that storm that caused it originally. And I was filming the next day, and central London had these really bad floods and storms. I was out of London, slightly out of London a bit, down past Greenwich, filming the scenes, the links basically, because I'm just in a chair talking. It's not like I'm filming a car chase. So it's quite easy to shoot, but I was shooting all that, and it's only that night, I think, when I got back from filming, or maybe the next day, that we got we were contacted that there'd been a flood. And so unfortunately the building, the low act, where Act 2 is, which is when you go into the time fracture, is lower than everything else, and that had there's an underground river, I think. I mean, maybe I'm repeating urban myth now, but there is an underground river, because it's kind of a motif in the show that there's this river running, a time stream, literally a stream going through it, and it's actually water, and people would step into it sometimes, not realizing it's real water. That's not the water from below the earth. That's kind of a fake thing. But they've kind of, so unfortunately that had flooded the actual real. You know what London's like? There's all these underground. It's the Thames, isn't it? All these estuaries that come in. Yeah, it burst its banks and kind of flooded everything. They cleaned it all out, and then unfortunately the same thing happened 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
When the
awful, isn't it? Awful to hear that happen again.
And then it's not the problem of so much the repairs; it just became problematic of how do you make sure that doesn't happen a third time, especially going into winter. So I think they've now, I guess, as I say, I stepped away from it, but I guess they've sorted that out, and they're in rehearsals at the moment. I think they open in about 2 weeks' time, I think.
Yes, I've got some friends who've got tickets for, I want to say early November their tickets are. So yeah, it must be pretty soon.
I think it's actually early. I thought it was the 2nd of November. I've got a feeling it opens on the 22nd of October. Because I saw
good. Hey, sooner the better.
Yeah, I think I saw that. Maybe that's previews, because we did preview for a long time. We never actually opened officially, because the opening night got postponed because of Freedom Day being pushed back. So I think also it was a shame, because I'm very grateful for it opening when it did, to go into a job like that, into a job like that. But after being in lockdown, here by myself, but I think it possibly opened too early, looking with retrospect. Okay. But also because it was, I would say that same about Joseph or Prince of Egypt, or what else was on in town? Cinderella had a lot of problems because everyone was being taken out by COVID. Like if somebody would get it, and then you'd be all pinged, or some friend's flatmate, and everyone was getting it. So these West End shows, kept on going down. The odd thing, though, isn't it? That flood would have always happened, pandemic or no pandemic. That is a fixed point in time and space. Weirdly, isn't that weird? Isn't that weird to think? I think the show would have happened a year earlier. Maybe it would have already finished by that point. I don't know, but because I think it was scheduled originally to be much earlier than that. But I was just very grateful to work on it, because who would think in 2021 that the Doctor would rescue me from lockdown and get me out the house? It was very very surreal, doing painting Silurians and sort of Crispanians and things like that. It was just mad.
Well, I think that's what fans have loved about it as well, that from the trailers that I've seen and the people who've done it, apparently there's a lot of, obviously there's all these options, but there's also lots of little nods to not just creatures of the current series, but of the classic series as well. Yeah,
there is. Particularly, in that, I was doing that filming for that day of the EPK, what they call the EPK is Electronic Press Kit. Which I never knew when I started in the business. I was like, what? Just call it a trailer. Just a trailer.
What's an EPK? What am I signing up for?
I think it's a very old-fashioned sort of theatrical name for it. But so I was there that day, and it was there's one particular character that isn't always there. It's there sometimes because of depending on the combinations of the people. So it's that was very exciting to see that. And Kieran is a great friend now who plays that character. Now I don't think he wasn't a fan, so I was like, oh my goodness, I get to paint you as this. If you see the trailer, it's in the trailer. It's the clown. It's the clown from The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. I kind of self-editing then. I couldn't remember what's in the trailer.
See, that'd make me terrified in a way, because the chief clown, that whole character is all about like the mannerisms and like the slight facial expressions. So that's scary enough watching it. And I thought to myself, God, if I run into that in real life, that's gonna send me.
He's fairly nice in the show. It's like
that's good.
So have you seen nice in the sense that he's not a threat, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
Because a lot of people, every time I showed photographs of there's a character called, he's very much featured in all the publicity, Broles. So that's a new name.
Yes.
That's not a Doctor Who character from the show, but it's Broles is the character, but it's like it's the pig mask from Daleks Take Manhattan.
Oh yes, yeah.
But without
the
tusks, I think. So those are quite terrifying masks, and I keep on showing people photographs of that, going, because I would do a lot of that, and I would put the mask and I would do all the makeup and things. I mean, what am I saying? Broles is a real person. Don't spoil the magic, kids. And everybody's reaction to Broles is, that's terrifying. Oh my word, that looks absolutely. I said, no, he's really friendly because he's playing this East Endy, like, hello, come on, I've got this and that, and I've got these. Oh, look at this. Because he's like a junkyard salesman, so it's like, hey, comedy, geezer. But he looks utterly terrifying. I remember taking some photograph back, to check the mask while they were filming the EPK, and it looked like they'd cornered an alien in ET. When they're trying to chase them, it looks absolutely terrifying. Or strange. It looked like Stranger Things. Without him talking.
I think that's the difference, though, isn't it? Like it's all good seeing it on the screen, but I remember being a kid, and when I first saw the Cybermen in the new series, like they were scary, but I was like, yeah, it's fine. I'm 10 years old. I can handle this. But then we went to like a Doctor Who, one of those like pop-up exhibitions they used to do, and obviously they had people in Cybermen outfits going around there. And I was terrified because obviously, like they're this tall, and like they're looking down at you.
It's like the first time you see a Dalek.
Eyes.
Yeah,
there's
something about a Dalek in real. I mean, I love the Daleks, and thousands of them around me. But in real life, because they're quite a inhuman shape.
Yes.
Kitschy as they are, sometimes it's just something about it that is just really freaky. Yeah. I remember being very. I won't say what happens at the end, but it does involve the ending does involve surprise, a Dalek at one point, but it's on a particular place, and I was so tired in tech, and I think it was because we were back. We'd not been working those hours for a long time, and tech is technical rehearsals are very long, and I was just really tired, and I started because we've been in lockdown, and I just went, stop complaining. You're about to see the Daleks invade blah, blah, blah. And, oh my word, this is magical. And I just went, yeah, I'm not complaining. This is just, I will sit here quite happily. You don't really need me here, hair and makeup wise, but I'm quite happy to be here to watch this unfold because this
moment.
So that's the only trouble. I haven't seen it in order. That's why I'm quite excited to go and see it. Because I think we saw Act 4, then Act 3, then Act 2, and then Act 1. And I think Act 4 made me cry at one moment. And Act 1, there's one big moment in Act 1 where the music kicks in and this big thing happens. And I cried because it's that kind of like magical. Particularly at that point post-lockdown. But as a fan...
I'll be crying as well.
I mean, it's kind of similar to if you went to the Doctor Who experience... I think it's been a while since I've done that. I think it was the 50th. I think I went. It had that beginning section where it was kind of interactive a bit.
Yes.
So that's like walking into that world. So it's like that, but times about 7,000.
Yeah. I need to see it myself, and I mean, for anyone listening, as you said, hopefully the 22nd of October, roughly, it's back.
I think that's the date they just put out on Twitter. Do check the times. I think originally I'd seen it was. I tweeted that it was the 2nd of November because that's when I'd seen the dates, but I think they've now brought it forward a bit.
Yeah, well, definitely check that out. And just whilst we're on Doctor Who, you mentioned earlier you're a lifelong Doctor Who fan. So how did you get into this wonderful, wacky little sci-fi show that we all love so much?
I know. Well, I'm very jealous of anybody that grew up lately. I say lately, it's about 15 years ago, with Kirstin and David Tennant as the Doctor, because I think that would be absolutely incredible to be a child at that point. It was
quite a time.
Oh my goodness, that was like, because I was very much grown up at that point, and I was loving it. So, I've worked out. I watched. I think the very first thing I watched, because someone posted about this lately, is the repeat of Planet of the Spiders the day before Robot aired.
Yes, yeah.
It's around Christmas apparently, because I was going, why? So I basically from Robot onwards, I was, I'm at the perfect age, being 4 or 5 years old, for Tom Baker's debut, and he was my Doctor. In the days before video and DVD, and we had the Target novels, as everybody is aware of. But he was the Doctor. The Doctor is Tom Baker to me, and it was one of those crazy things. I can't believe, looking back, that I was in such a delicious place to find it. Now you can come to Doctor Who at any point and any time. It's there's lots of different. I love all the Doctors in their own way, but I am a Tom Baker boy. But I couldn't remember why. I vaguely remembered Planet of the Spiders. I went, well, that was like a year before, surely. Why do I remember that? It would have been about 3. Why would I remember that? Then I found out that they'd repeated it the day before, and I must have caught that.
Yes, the omnibus.
But the Robot particularly, I know it's so solidified in my head because I used to call, as a child, the Tom Baker title sequence going down the giant robot's arm, like you're inside the metal arm of the robot, because it's a circular metal looking thing.
It is, yes, yeah.
So I knew it had a big effect on me, and particularly episode 4 is. I watch episode 4 now of Robot and go, I feel like it's so burnt into my mind, everything that happened in that episode. I think because the robot grows and he throws the bucket of stuff over it. Spoilers, sorry, and it disintegrates. And then the next but then it's very sporadic memories of it. The biggest memory, and I only get scared twice in those days.
Okay,
and the second time is such an iconic scene, is Davros's first reveal. So I just remember Sarah Jane stumbling through the trenches. And obviously you watch it as an adult, you see, that's film and that's videotape. But as a child, it's because he's in darkness and he's just illuminated by the lights of his chair. You can't really see him very much in that first shot.
So eerie, isn't it?
So scary. That really scared me. And the crinoid transformation when the guy sits up in a bed and he's kind of an axon painted green, that bit, that really scared me. Apart from that, I was I think that what made me want to learn about how cameras work and what is acting, what's hair and makeup, what's special effects. So I think that Doctor Who inspires us to make our own adventures. So therefore, it's which is what's interesting about the Time Fracture actually, because what's weird about that is, in a weird way, we've all been playing our own Doctor Who adventures for so long that people might feel like, I'll say this to everybody, but you might feel like, well, why would I want to play somebody else's rules of a Doctor Who game? Just to walk into those sets and costumes and monsters and characters is just so delicious. It's worthwhile. But I understand, because we've all got we all probably made our own amateur Doctor Who or wrote.
Trust me, the amount of break times in school, running around, making up our own adventures. That was the staple. Funny
you should say that. So the weirdest bit, I still can't figure out why, and I think it's to do with the Peter Cushing movies, is between 75 and 79, Destiny and Genesis, and that, weirdly, of all things, Destiny is my favourite Doctor Who story because I was 9 years old, the perfect age,
Fab story, fab story.
Obviously, it's very disco and trashy and guilty pleasure now, but, that is, that's why I don't mind anybody complaining about Jodie or complaining about Chibnall or complaining about anything in the show, because that's I love that. We all come to it at a certain point. We all see things different ways. Anyway, there's a 5-year gap there, and yet I still remember playing Daleks in the playground in that late 70s period. So I think it must be because the movies were on a lot.
I think they were repeated a lot, especially in the 70s.
Yeah, I think they were, because I kind of remember, particularly Invasion Earth, a lot. And that's why that's really special to me as well, because I actually got to... I was shooting at Shepperton Studios the other day. I was working on a film, and but of course I just watched Dalek 6388's amazing documentaries about the film, the second film. And so literally, I think outside the hair and makeup room was that alleyway where Peter Cushing and Thingy disappeared down the the great
down like the manhole.
Manhole, yes.
Yeah.
So I literally was like, oh my god, obviously it's changed a bit, but in 60 years it's kind of still there because I think it was probably the old wardrobe and prop making place, so it's still there. I was having
those films have a great charm, don't they? Those 60s films, they're so comfy, like they're just like they're very watchable. And if you just sort of, I watched them as a kid. When I was like 9 or 10, I was like, right, so these aren't part of the TV show. But once you get your head around that and you just forget, if you just watch it for what it is, forget that it's part of the TV show. I think they're great. Yeah. They're great fun.
I think even back then, I think it was very weird to us because it was like, the Doctor's human. What do you mean? Because it was very much, we just had Deadly Assassin.
I'm Doctor Who.
Yeah, I'm Doctor Who. But it kind of, again, I think the guys, I think they've done another video, haven't they, where they kind of theorised that up until kind of the end of Troughton, it kind of was not really very clear that the Doctor was alien. There's lots of references to him kind of being from the future, but not of a different time. They don't really say very often it's a different planet. Sometimes they do.
I think one of my favourite references, and it's only just because I watched it recently, is in Evil of the Daleks, when they're discussing how it's Jamie who has to do the test to isolate the human factor, and the Doctor says, "Oh, well, why don't you just use me?" And the Dalek says, "You've travelled in time too much. You're more than human." And I'm like, that's such a great line because it isn't saying that he is or isn't. He's just saying you're more than human. And it's such a delicious line. I'm like,
and I think
that's the good stuff.
I thought, oh, that's a really good example of what that video is about. And then I think later on in the story, he references that he's not. He's from a different planet. I don't, obviously, yes, I might be wrong there because I suddenly went, oh, or maybe that's the first time he says he's from a different planet because I'm sure he says, my planet, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, oh, maybe he does reference. So it's weird, isn't it? So I think that's why the Peter Cushing movies fit in with that because at that point, they probably did think he was a man from the future rather than
a really eccentric wizard.
Exactly. Aren't we all?
It's funny though that you mentioned earlier about how like so for you like Robot Part 4 is the one that's ingrained in your head. Like for me, growing up with Eccleston, I will always remember. I mean, I remember them all, but I always remember like frame by frame Bad Wolf, the penultimate episode of series 1, because by that point I was now what I guess what you call a fan at again 9 years old, the perfect age, and obviously that cliffhanger, the Daleks are back, there's hundreds of them, how's he going to get Rose out? So I remember every day after school for that next week I'd come home, get my VHS tape that I'd recorded Bad Wolf on, because we were a bit late to the whole DVD Skybox games. We were still on tapes, but rewinding that tape, and I would watch Bad Wolf every night after school until that, because I just wanted more, and I was I need to know what happens.
You have oh my goodness, I'm so jealous of one actually having videotape as a child. Although videotape came to me, I'm dyslexic actually. It's Dyslexia Day today. We're recording this on apparently. And I started doing class when Peter Davies took over, which I was very much. So my true fan, I'm a fan, land, bang, slap, plaster on the head. Starts with the Ribos operation with the Key to Time season. So I think I'd watched obviously up to then, but from literally remembering everything and kind of I knew I was a fan was the first Romana and that season of the Key to Time, and even more so with the next year with Destiny and the goofiness of all that, which is actually late 70s, actually kind of quite fitting really, TV. But I had to go to these classes when Peter Davison took over. I had to go to classes, and so I think I'd missed episode 1 of Castrovalva.
Oh, no.
And I even started doing. I used to get my sort of parent, whoever was like at home, to record it on audio. So I have a very, which is weird, isn't it? Because that was obviously happening in the 60s, but even then, I think the reel-to-reel thing, actually, what we recorded them, that was just like, horrendously trying to listen to that. So, but really, my uncle got a videotape machine. By the time it got to Earthshock, great timing.
Yes, yeah.
So obviously now there's some bits of Fall to Doomsday, which I remember the audio. I don't remember the visuals. It's really odd.
Fall to Doomsday is a weird one, isn't it? Like,
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But that we don't remember that. But yeah, 4 times it's really odd. I think I watched it again not so long ago, and I was like, this is even weirder than I remember it being. But if you view it in the sense that it's, I love that TARDIS team though. I do love the season 19.
It's a great set.
Team.
Yeah.
It's just I think it's probably just a bit early because it's filmed first, and it's all very much first day of school, I guess, and they haven't quite found their feet.
Well, as someone then, as you say, you sort of became a fan in the mid to late 70s, and then obviously Doctor Who trundled on. Obviously I wasn't there, but looking back, when people analyse it, it seems to be that in that, like, the mid to late 70s, it was almost like everyone was a Doctor Who fan, or you could say, like, oh yeah, I watch Doctor Who every Saturday. So what was it like, particularly, I guess, the mid to late 80s, when the public profile, if you like, was a lot less reduced, and the viewing figures had come down, and, there was all the behind-the-scenes things going on. So what was it like being a teenage age,
and a teenager as well? So I think I remember joining... I think the veil began to lift of the magic of it, probably with season 22. I think I joined the local... I come from Gosport, which is near Portsmouth. And there was a Portsmouth group... for Doctor Who. So I think I joined that. I think David Stead, that lovely guy who discovered Weird in Space episode 3, I think he's on one of those missing believed white documentaries. He was in the group.
Oh, nice.
I don't think I think he just found it actually at that point, but not that it didn't really understand what that meant then in 85. But yes, I think watching, it had gone back to Saturdays. They were about 45 minutes long because it was a resurrection. And watching it with a group of other teenage fans, suddenly Attack of the Cybermen does not stand up very well. And you suddenly go, oh, it's all very over. You had Twin Dilemma, which, you'd gone from Cave Zandrazzini, which is an amazingly gritty, kind of where you would have thought the show would have gone. Instead, the next week you get Tints, much as I love pantomime, obviously, but... It's very, but not on Doctor Who. It's very saturated, high saturation colours, and very shouty, which, to be honest, most TV was at that point.
Yeah.
In 85, people didn't have conversations with each other on TV. They shouted at each other.
They just bellowed.
They just, not the shouting, but it's the at each other. They didn't talk with somebody. They talked at somebody. Every dialogue was kind of almost written like, so you say it up front rather than to somebody. It was really weird. So whether we now look back at Doctor Who and go, well, that seems really, why are they so sort of aggressive, and why are they this? No, that was just TV in general at that point. There's obviously some great stories in 22. I love Mark of the Rani. I think, and Revelation and Vengeance. Two Doctors is one of the, I think that was when that's when it got pulled, actually, was during the Two Doctors, because you've got Servalan, you've got Spain, you've got Patrick Troughton, you've got Fraser Hines. Oh my word, this should be the best Doctor Who, and somehow it's just, frankly, a mess, really, of a story, but with great people in it, so it's still watchable.
Yeah.
And I think it was around between episode 2 and 3 that it got pulled, I think. So I think that's what... It was, yeah. That's what led to it. So I think after then it was a bit... I think that was... Because I remember selling a lot of my stuff then as well. I sold a lot of my... I still have my Dennis Fisher giant robot at that point. I think I sold him, and I've sold some other things. I've replaced him since. I've got one back since. But,
oh, that's good. That's good.
I know, because I kind of felt bad about that. I sold a lot of stuff then, and then you reach that age of disillusionment. But you always do tend to come back to it. So that's why I quite like season 24, because it was such a breath of fresh air at the time. It's hard to describe it now, but
it's fun.
It seems to be reevaluated now that they put it on Blu-ray, weirdly. I don't know the rumours true about it's supposed to be made for like a 5 o'clock slot or a Sunday slot. Okay. I don't know if that's true, that rumour. Maybe that's an urban myth I'm repeating. But it certainly felt like that. It shouldn't have been on at 7:30 opposite Coronation Street. It should have been on... Yes. kind of around the Neighbours slot, kind of around that time, but which at that point was 5 o'clock to 5:30. So it should have been around that time, I think, because that would have been if you put it in with kids' TV or put it on a Sunday afternoon back then, it would have worked. I don't think it worked at that time going out at 7:30 opposite Coronation Street. Yeah. Obviously, then you have Remembrance and everything kind of perks up towards the end.
It's funny though how obviously you say about season 22 that was the era for you, I guess, when you said the magic started to lift. There was stuff that you considered not as endearing or as good, but again it's this thing like we were saying about when you come into it, because for some reason I think it's because there were a lot of the stories on DVD early. I watched a lot of season 22 as a 9-10-year-old, and I've got a lot of affection for those stories. Like like the Two Doctors. I will admit, it's a mess, but I love it. I love
there's
how
a lot of fun stuff in there. Don't get me wrong, but as far as as a actual piece of television, no, I don't think it works at all. But there's still a lot of glorious stuff in there. I think the problem with Two Doctors is probably the first episode. I think they're wandering around that weird spaceship for a bit too long.
Yeah, it's like a victim of the six. Well, it essentially is a 6-parter, isn't it? Except it's 3 45-minute episodes. So I guess it's that classic 6-part padding where it's like, oh, we need to fill this time. Either let's walk down a corridor, get locked up, or another trope of some sort.
I think as well. Normally with a 6-parter, normally you used to have like a 4-parter, then like almost like a 2-part extra bit on the end, where they would sort of up the game by changing the location. Whether with that, I think they do it at the beginning, and I think it just makes the beginning very slow. So I think that's why I find a problem with it, because of the. But again, if you watch that at 9 years old, one of my friends, Matthew, he's a big doctor. He works for BBC now. He's a Doctor Who fan, and he loves the Colin Baker era because he's probably 10 years younger than me, and therefore he came into it at when he was a kid at the time. Yeah. So to him, Colin Baker
perfect age, almost, like you say,
It's the same with so I'll be very honest with the new series. I absolutely love the revival.
Oh, fab.
With Russell T Davies and Eccleston and David Tennant. I absolutely hated the Matt Smith era. I don't really know why, but I think it's possibly, again, it was to do with my age. I think I was getting older than some of the very young, I thought very inexperienced leads come into it.
Sure.
And I think also you had the redesign of the Daleks, and you had the new title sequence and new music, and I was like, oh, that's all wrong. Oh my God, stop. And I've gone back and tried to rewatch, and there are bits I do like of series 5 now. But there's still a lot I absolutely despise, which is weird, isn't it? But that's just, but if you were 10 at the time watching it, I completely understand. Matt Smith's probably, I did get into Matt Smith, I have to say. I couldn't stand Amy Pond with a passion.
It's a weird one, because when Matt Smith started, I was 14, so it was that weird, teenage age when you're going through like a lot of changes in your life, or like as a person. And I remember the Matt Smith era. I wouldn't say I hate. I certainly don't hate it, but it's probably the one era of since the revival that I feel the most disconnected with. And I still, I watched every week. I watched it live. I'd always make time for it. I never stopped watching. But yeah, just a lot of those stories, for whatever reason, I just didn't. I'd come away from it being like, oh, I didn't really connect with that, or I didn't really enjoy it in the same way I enjoy. And at first I thought, oh, maybe it's me being like, oh, I'm an RTD fanboy, blah blah blah. But the more I get older, and the more, because like yourself, I've watched them back, and I do enjoy some bits of it more, but still, largely, I feel this great disconnect. And in my head, I'm like, I wonder if it was just at the age I initially watched it, because it's a big time of your life going through,
it really is.
14,
Funny
15,
you should say
16.
that, because I thought, actually, Matt Smith to a boys in their teens would actually be very appealing, because he's kind of like a slightly older brother. So I thought it would be. Actually, I thought that would be, because you can wear a skinny suit and look great in it, type of thing, and at 14. And I understand.
Yeah.
And I even at the time I was going like, but I would never, I talk about it frankly now, but I would never have gone on social media at the time and like attacked the show or attacked. Okay.
No,
I wasn't a fan of
course.
Amy Pond. Fair enough. That's not to do with the actress so much. It's the character and her, how it was written, and some very odd, clunky scenes that go on with her. And it's almost like, it reminds me of when Tara King comes into the Avengers, to replace Dinah Rigg, because they kind of stop production and they add in the character of Mother and retrofit Mother into a lot of things to kind of to take the charisma and the comedy away from the companion, the assistant, or in the whatever you want to call it, in the Avengers. And I almost feel like they did that with Rory, I kind of went.
Right,
I think
yeah.
Rory might have been there in episode 1, and I think filming schedule-wise, I feel like his episodes are actually the last 6 filmed. But then they've kind of... That's why I swear that's why he keeps getting killed or disappears, because because he's not in the episodes in between, because they've kind of gone, oh, we need someone else. Bring quickly.
Yeah.
You boy, come here. You.
I think what you said about like Matt Smith being... I think he... my disconnect wasn't so much with him. I think it was because I had a lot of friends who were still watching it who like, you know, like say, liked his character, like especially like the way he dressed, the amount of tweed jackets I saw in that.
Oh yeah, no, I really like the. Don't get me wrong,
goodness.
I think he looked amazing, and I think he looked. I love the costume. I didn't really believe what he was saying a lot of the time. I think you've summed it up there for me. Like the speech for me is always the Rings of Akaten speech, which is a great speech on paper. But there's just elements of it where, because I mean, you'll know as well, like when you go into like acting or performing, it's that whole thing you get taught of, like, you need the audience to believe the character you're playing or the circumstances that they're in, and everyone's like, oh, Matt Smith he's the old man in a young man's body, and there are moments where he does, for me at least, he does carry that, and I'm like, yes, I see that, but then there are moments like that speech where I don't believe him all the way. No. And then I would say the same.
Yeah.
My pet hate episode, it's always funny, isn't it? You talk about the pet hates rather than your greatest loves, is the Pandorica Opens.
Sure.
I think it's the is that the last episode or the penultimate episode?
I think it's the penultimate, the Pandorica Opens.
The one where they lock him in a cupboard, where all the monsters and Doctor Who come along and lock him in a cupboard. That pushed me so far over the edge. I was like, what is that? And then the next episode, he does the big speech in Stonehenge. And I would say the same about that. To me, I didn't believe a word he was saying. But I'm not saying that's easy to stand there and say all this technobabble.
Oh, God, no.
You know, as a performer, that's not very... And I couldn't do it. But some people can stand there, and Tom Baker's a good example of being able to do that amazingly and make it sound like it's truth. I didn't believe it. But having said that... I did warm. Everybody else doesn't really like the second 2 years of Matt Smith, and I go, oh, actually, I kind of prefer them to the first year, for him more than anything else. But I've never rewatched them. I don't think I've ever I think 2010 onwards, I don't think I've rewatched anything more than once.
That's fair.
I have gone back a few times. Obviously, Day of the Doctor's a bit different.
Yeah.
And I've gone back. Well, I've watched a few things because of time fracture. I went back and watched Kablam. And I went back and watched something else as well. There's a few like things that I need to... I just need to go back and check this. Oh, and the Davros stories in Capaldi's, that was important as well. So.
What's your stance on the Capaldi era then? The other half of Moffat's tenure,
I really want to like it.
Okay.
I really want to like it. And in retrospect...
There's a butt in there somewhere.
So, you know, when we were just talking about Colin Baker...
Yes,
saying like in 1985 it seemed like a really good idea, but it was the worst idea ever in television history to make your charismatic leading man who will take you by the hand and take you on an adventure to be really offish and aggressive and nasty. That's a terrible, the worst idea in 1984-85. Why repeat that in 2014? It was like, why? You've just cast the Doctor older, okay, and you've just cast him unlikable. That is TV rating suicide.
Yeah.
Why would anybody want to watch a show where the lead is unlikable when they've got 7,000 other channels?
See, I get what you mean. I think, Series 8 is my favourite series. There's
some great things. It does get there, but I'm not the first half so much. But the Mummy on the Orange Express, and that's that season, isn't it?
It is. I think, again, though, it's for me at least, it was that time of life thing. Because when Series 8 started, I'd just gone to university, like literally first week. So I was 18. And by that point, with Matt Smith, I was still watching it, but I was thinking... The word I always used was it was becoming a bit too fairy tale for me personally. Not saying that's a bad thing, but that was the vibe I was getting, and I was like, I'm 18, like I'm this is not for me at the minute. And then Series 8 comes in and is like, forget a lot of that fairy tale. It's still there in dribs and drabs, but they're like, forget a lot of that. we're going with we're harder aged, we're a bit more on the nose. We've got a character who's unlikable. And I think I get what you're saying. I think from a fan's perspective, like someone like us who's going to watch every week, no matter,
for us, it's great. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But yes, for maybe like the casual viewer, it's like,
Suicide.
This guy's not very nice. Yeah, I'm not going to watch this.
And I think that started what I almost thought was going to be the end of the series. Up until about 2 weeks ago when they announced Russell T Davies was coming back. I think that decision, the casting of Capaldi, and I love Peter Capaldi, but as a show, it's fine to cast an older Doctor, but you've got to make that. Then you've really got to go the other way. You've got to make him like Peter Cushing and very likable, and have like a romantic, two younger companions.
Sure,
a boy and a girl. That will they, won't they? Because that's what a modern audience would expect. As a fan, though, it's great. I think it's still a bit clunky.
Sure.
But some of the best episodes is it Flatline is in there as well?
Flatline, yeah.
And the Mummy Express, and I can't remember.
That's the one,
I can't remember. Oh, it's the Missy Sideman story at the end, isn't it? So I'd say the second half is really
the second half.
Yeah,
so Death
really
in Heaven.
Good. Yeah, that's brilliant. I think probably the beginning is a little bit. I'm struggling to remember what happens at the beginning. What really changed my mind about him, funny enough, is I went to the launch of the Blu-ray DVD of Series 8 at the Ham Hotel in Soho, and it was Moffat, Peter Capaldi, Jenna Coleman, and Missy. Excuse me, I've forgotten her name.
Michelle Gomez.
Michelle Gomez, thank you, of course. And see him, with a crowd, and just to hear that. Suddenly, I was seeing them live, and I think I was covering it for some publication. I can't remember what it was now, but Planet Scara, I think. And just suddenly seeing them work it, I went, oh no, I'm on board now. I'm like, now I've seen this, and it was Frank Skinner doing the Q&A. Funny, he was hosting. And at that point, I hadn't realised. I think we'd seen him in the show. I think in the Mummy episode, but I hadn't realised how big a fan he was, and how knowledgeable he was. Because at one point he went, "Stephen Moffat, did you just turn the Brigadier into a Cyberman?" Anyway, moving on. And I was just like, "Oh my good, wow!" Just clap. I just not. So suddenly I was very much more into it. Then I went, "Oh, I get it now." But as a And isn't it weird how any era of Doctor Who, at the time you might not be so into it, but as soon as it's over and you're on to the next Doctor, and it becomes a definable era. So suddenly the Capaldi era, and I think it works better with Bill Potts as well, Capaldi. I think that really, that's nothing against Jenna Coleman particularly, but I think having something much more sparkier to bounce off works so much better. So that final series 10, is it?
Series 10,
is it's 11 is the 13th Doctor. Series 10 is works brilliantly. Not all the time, obviously. There's always a few duff episodes, but I think that works really well.
So do you think Jodie's era will get the same reprieve once she bows out?
I hope so. I really do. I think that's what I was trying to get towards. I was hoping it will do. Whether... Because I loved the last series. I loved series 12. Like a lot of people, I didn't hate series 11. 11 is flawed as Doctor Who's an adventure series. So to have an adventure, you need baddies, you need villains, you need drama. And if you take away the villainousness of all the baddies, oh no, they're not giant spiders that will eat you. They're just our friends. That's like, well, there's no drama there. So I think it becomes like, oh, you're just going to it waters everything down, and the threat isn't there.
Okay.
So I think as far as, but I think they rectified that from Resolution. Oh, what's the Dalek story? Resolution.
Resolution, the first one.
Resolution's the first one. I think from that onwards, there we go. You found it now. You found your sweet spot. So I think it kind of works from there on. But I think a lot of obviously there are episodes that are quite cute in that first series, but I think that's the flaw in it, that the companions are written very blandly, They're not given them very much to. Bradley Walsh aside, not given the other two very much to do. Apart from, they're literally almost like 60s companions going, yes, Doctor, sometimes with a bike. They're not really. They've not really given very much to do in that first series or the second series, really. So, I'm interested to see what this new series is like. Still no idea when it's going to broadcast, but I was not expecting the news drop. I hadn't heard about it. I don't know anybody, and I know a lot of people in the industry. And not that they're Doctor Who people so much, but I know a lot of people in TV. Nobody knew that was happening.
Complete bombshell.
It was totally a shock when the Russell T Davies news dropped. To the point where I literally had to. I was working on a show that night, and a friend messaged me about it, and I was like going. Well, he didn't even tell me what it was. He said, "Have you seen the news?" I was like, "What do you mean?" Checked Twitter, and I really thought the Doctor Who BBC Twitter had been hacked. Because I thought that can't be true.
Okay.
But then when I checked everything else, it obviously was.
I think it was such a surprise, wasn't it? Because I mean, this is the first time this has happened properly. Like, I know they had Barry Letts come back as
that's the
executive
only time I can
producer in
and
the 80s.
And even then, Barry Letts is in the back of an office, just going, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea."
Yeah, that's fine. That's good. Yeah. So, this is the first time a showrunner is coming back full on. So, where do you stand on that? Are you excited?
Oh,
are you
very
a bit
pro
like,
it. I think it's not. I'm not expecting, the series 1, 2, 3, and 4.5 sort of style of stuff. I think because Russell's moved on. It's a Sim was incredible. I've still not seen Years and Years. I must watch that.
Very good series.
I think he'll have a lot more because I don't think Russell has particularly a big plan as such. I think he just writes really good rollicking adventures, which is where Doctor Who, as far as the general public is concerned, it is. You just need to have a charismatic lead, a charismatic companion, and go off on a huge adventure and have some thrills and chills and some laughs and scares. It doesn't get more complicated than that. I don't want a story arc telling me, that Amy Pond's daughter's actually River Song and, and her aunt is actually Davros. I don't want a convoluted story arc. I mean, fun as that, actually, that River Song, actually, I take that back. River Song is a genius creation. But, in fact, if anything, River Song's my favourite part of that Moffat era, really, because she's kind of an old pro, whacking it out to the back of the stalls, and showing the children how it should be done, type of thing, most of the time. And again, that's probably an age thing, isn't it? So I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen, but he'll probably just take it back to year dot. The weirdest thing with Jodie really is that I love her and I think she's great. I just slightly underwhelmed by the show, not her.
Okay. Yeah.
But the title sequence and the remix of the theme tune is my favourite of the revival. I think that is so beautiful. I love that title sequence. And so I'm kind of going, could you keep that? That's the only thing. And because the logo's on everything now, I'm thinking, I really like that logo.
Oh, don't. That was the first thing everyone said. It was like, don't change the logo on the Blu-ray sets, Russell, please.
I know, that's the trouble, isn't it? It's always the problem with Doctor Who, that you kind of have to... that is a nightmare. I think we'll have to keep it as... That's going to have to be the classic logo now, I guess, isn't it? And then...
the new classic, just to make us all feel ancient. Yeah,
I know, it's terrifying, isn't it? And I love the Blu-rays. I love as well. I got obviously Series 12. I do love. That's where I started with the show. So I got that thinking, I won't get them all. I've had all the DVDs are all behind me, but I won't get the Blu-rays. And of course, straight away, rebuying it all on Blu-ray. It's like
Well, someone said to me the other day, it's like, at what point are we going to start calling, like, Series 1, so Eccleston, like, classic? And I was like, don't.
No, my goodness. Well, I'm in the room where I watched Rose in 2005. So I was in the opposite corner of this room, on that sofa over there, watching it literally in a ball, really nervous, thinking after the Paul McGann movie, which I love the Paul McGann film for what it is.
Yeah.
But if after having one revival that didn't work, the likelihood of a second revival work is... I mean, I was pretty sure it would, but you still weren't sure until the title until it started to roll. You had no idea.
Yeah.
In 2005, you had no idea how that's going to fit into TV landscape. You know, how is this going to work with Strictly Come Dancing and I'm Celebrity and Big Brother being the biggest shows at the time, when like drama isn't really in fashion, let alone sci-fi.
Yeah. And
for it to work as well as it did was absolutely like exoneratingly mind-blowing. It was like it was like a Messiah moment. It was like
Yeah, I mean the relief for like you guys, you know, who'd been waiting all this time, and then it was, because I mean, to me, you know, it was just this very successful. I mean, I quickly became aware of the classic stuff as well, but obviously it didn't have the same impact on me in the sense that I didn't know I guess the trials and tribulations for it to get there. I was just like, oh, there's this cool new sci-fi show that my dad says I should watch, and it's really cool. Whereas for people like yourself, it was much bigger than that.
Oh,
or like
the glorious moments. I mean, in some ways, we still don't really know what happened with that for the making of Series 1, did we? Bits and pieces are coming out now, but it's like, oh, actually, there's a lot more to it, I think. And I've spoken to a lot of people in the industry about it, and it's interesting what they say about it. If they were working on it. I think I met somebody the other day that was on the David Tennant era and on production, and his reaction was quite interesting. Anyway,
moving swiftly onward.
Was that during that first series? So you're saying that I'm not sure it settles down until Dalek, really.
Sure.
I think production. No. Take that back, because it's episodes 2 and 3 are great. It's episodes 4 and 5. It's a bit like it is. It was that first block, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And my friend Nalco is in those first episodes. First episodes filmed. I think she was there day one with that pig costume guard.
Okay, yeah.
That was first day of filming ever on Doctor Who, and she's there on the first day, and she went on to do Torchwood afterwards, obviously. But
of course, yeah.
So we, I keep on asking her stories about that, but I think she posted a great photograph the other day for the anniversary when it's her and Chris and the pig creature. That was day one. Trying to get what are we making? What's this? So I think there was an pop-up exhibition at Brighton Pier that started around the middle of the season. And I remember going to it and going like, this is so weird seeing... Because obviously I'd been to Longley. I'd been to the 20th. I'd been to that infamous the Doctor Who Woodstock. I'd been there for the 20th anniversary. But I have some family there. That's why I used to go to Longley a lot. But to see a new exhibition, which is kind of like a very mini version of the experience, I guess. But it was because you began to realise that a lot of the costumes for the new series, a lot of it is green screen special effects. So, we hadn't even got to Parting of the Ways yet. No. So it was still very much like this is the launch of the new series type of thing. And I think I went back after the first series had finished, so because you couldn't really put very much in there. You had the Big Ben clock, and they had bits and pieces, but a lot of it, I think eventually they had put the not the Anne Diamond, Anne Robinson robot in there, and like the two robots from Bad Wolf, Trini and Susanna, and they'd put them in there by that point. And so that was glorious. But also, I remember going to like Waterstones and seeing a child go past me and pick up a Doctor Who book or a toy, probably, I don't know, and to see that in 2005. Because I think by that point you kind of thought, it's always going to be a cult classic like Blake Seven. It's always going to be loved. Yeah. But it's very much in the past now, and it'll carry on with Big Finish, and it'll carry on with comic strips, and it'll carry on. Well, they try to do that,
but it won't be in like that mainstream.
No, it won't be mainstream
sphere again.
So for it to come back and to hit the ground running and to be that successful. And then when David Tennant came in, which was a shock, because obviously when Eccleston leaving was announced, you think, my goodness, that's it. It's just be one series and that's it. That's all we're going to have. So for it to carry on again, almost have a second revival, or third revival, and to knock it out the park as much as it did, and to have a second golden era. I still have photographs somewhere of going into Toys R Us and that whole wall
God,
of action
and the
figures,
wall, yeah.
which is, at this point, I'm in my 30s, and that's magical to me then. Let alone if you're a child, I think. That was like going back to the Tom Baker era.
I remember that display. I remember, because going every week and just seeing that on the wall and seeing all, the toys you could get and the helmets of, the Cybermen and just, anything you could think of was there. And I know there's a lot of criticism now, people saying, it's not being, marketed in the same way. My personal, I'm not, hold my hands up, I'm not a marketing executive at all, but I think it's fair to say, especially with toys, the landscape has changed a bit in terms of
probably has.
Mainstream consumers buying. General audience members aren't buying toys, I would argue, in the same way they were 15 years ago. It's not as much of a...
No, probably not. I think it's a mixture of things. I think that's right. I think it's also... I think they don't market it quite the same way because it's almost... it doesn't need to be marketed.
It's the brand
kind of
sort of everyone's
itself.
aware of. Yeah.
I think that's probably more the official way of putting it.
Yeah.
Whether they're kind of, I don't think they're embarrassed by it, but I think that kind of happened in the 80s. That the show, they kind of just went, oh well, we'll just put it out, and we don't have to do anything about it anymore. And it feels a bit like that.
It's almost like history repeating.
It feels very late 80s to me now. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. I'm not really sure the corporation's quite behind it in the same way. They know it makes a lot of money, because I think it would make money even if it wasn't on the air. And that's why I was kind of expecting, I think you might get to the 60th, and that's going to be it. That was my opinion until 2 weeks ago. I was like, I think we might get one series now, and then you'll get a special in 2023, and that's going to be it. Because I have to say, even I don't dislike the Timeless Child idea particularly, but I have to say, if I as a writer was going to do that, I would do that in the final episode, because it's it's almost like a reveal, and it's almost like a dead end slightly if you do that, because trying to get out of that is quite hard unless it changes, obviously. But
well, of course, we'll see in series 13 whenever it comes out.
But I love the idea of it. But I would end it like the War Games. I would have gone, no, this is the end.
That's it. Yeah.
If the War Games had been the end, obviously it wasn't. But I would have ended on that. So I was fully expecting this is how it's going to end. Is kind of this. That's how it's going to go out. It's like that. I don't think they planned it like that. It's just my personal opinion. But the turnaround has been really strange. I think you're right about the toys. I think it's just got to that point where it just feels like the late 80s, where they just think it sells itself.
Yeah. I think, as someone, like you say, as a fan who's experienced the wilderness years of the 1990s and early 2000s, obviously there's no way for any of us to know concretely, but say as a hypothetical, if after we have the 60th and say Russell does 1 or 2 series and then he goes, say then the BBC were like, okay, we're again, like they did in the 80s, we're not cancelling it, we're resting it, quote unquote resting it. Say they said that again in the mid-2020s and said, yeah, we're resting it, we're having a few years, but, do you think we'd see it back eventually? Again, or do you think...
Yes, because it makes money. Because it makes a lot of money.
Money makes the world go round.
Artistically with good ideas, I think it will always come back. Whether it will be... excuse me. Also, in the old days when it was ran for 26 seasons, with a little blip towards the end, that way of being automatically... cold brain. Renewed, thank you. Yeah. You can cut this bit. Excuse me.
Okay.
Excuse me. The days when the show ran for 26 seasons and it would be automatically renewed every year, it doesn't really happen anymore. TV doesn't really work like that. We as fans presume it still does. It doesn't.
Yep.
So in actual fact, this is a very old show now. And I'm not even talking about as a revival. It's an old show.
Oh yeah, 16 years in this day and age for a TV show is
rare.
Yeah,
so it's kind of. I think I think it's doing very well considering I think most things would have got cancelled. I mean, there was a time when I thought it should have got cancelled after David Tennant, which is crazy now because that's so long ago. I take that back now. I'm glad it has continued.
Wasn't that rumoured to be on the table for a very brief moment?
It was, because they thought they couldn't replace him. They thought, and production-wise, I think also it's a lot harder show to make than we realise as well.
Yeah, it's I see these all the time now. It's like, Russell managed to make it one series every year, but but in the last 10 years alone, the way TV is made has changed so much, even in the last 10 years.
Gosh.
So
especially going to HD.
And I just think
when they went to HD, that became a real problem, I think. And it was just it was so hard to try and shoot. And that 13 episode thing was kind of came from America. With Buffy being 22 episodes, so a half season, like season 1 of Buffy is 13 episodes. So I think it was kind of based on that American half season.
That style, yeah.
Where the UK doesn't make TV like that. It doesn't really have that.
Yeah, well, a lot of the dramas now are 8 parts. Like, I mean, when they said, we're making Doctor Who 10 episodes and people were in uproar, I was like, but that's there's no other show at least that's doing more episodes than that.
But I would kind of prefer if they're going to go down, if they went down to 6 episodes, that's fine, but 6 episodes every year.
Sure.
I don't like is the big gaps. I don't like the big, because I think that's when the public stop caring a little bit.
Yeah, it feels like the really hurt Capaldi all over again.
Because I think there was a big gap between
9 and 10 there was, it was about a year and 3 months, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely suicidal. I think that's when people start losing interest or think it's been cancelled, or in the UK it's different. Abroad it's different, but I think in the UK, I hate to say I hated the Sunday thing. I hate the New Year's Day thing. I don't like those. And I thought Doctor Who'd worked brilliantly on a Sunday before the revival happened in 2005. Or actually Sunday, because at that point Saturday TV was just trash. In a great way, don't get me wrong, but it was very trashy.
Yeah,
you didn't have drama at 6 o'clock on a Saturday.
Entertainment. Yeah.
But I thought at that point a Sunday slot would have been a great idea. As it happened, it completely changed TV again, and it made it fashionable. To do that, 13 years later on a Sunday, I'm not sure that worked as well. But I don't know if Saturday would have worked. But the vibe of it doesn't seem quite right, and I hate the New Year's Day thing as well. I think that's
fair.
That's just people have got hangovers, and mainly because I'm always doing shows at the Christmas, so New Year's Day is a bit of a pain to go. The Christmas Day is much more fun thing to do. Odd, isn't it? Apart from Rose and a few other episodes, I don't think I've seen a lot of things live on broadcast.
Yeah, it's harder when you get older.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it?
I'm always usually doing a show, so I literally, especially on a Saturday, I'm normally in a theatre, so it's or something. Very rarely I watch it. I can remember, funny you saying about, you just reminded me of Parting of the Ways and Bad Wolf. I think I had the same, even though I was obviously not a kid at that point. I remember walking around here. It was really bright and sunny because obviously it was going into summer, wasn't it? Before Parting of the Ways aired, walking around the streets around here in the park in Brockley, getting really excited about the fact the final episode was coming on, which is a feeling I'd never felt for so long. In that kind of quite childlike wonder of it. And funny, I remember talking about that earlier, I was so excited about the end of series. And obviously, my favourite of the revival, I think, I thought it was just me, but apparently everybody else loves it, is the end of Series 4. And particularly the end of Series 4, which I think is just amazing. A mate of mine's in the next episode, the one with the red bus in it, David Ames.
Yeah, the Planet of the Dead,
which I also love, but that's less popular. I love it. I'm a bit biased now.
Yeah.
And I still remember dashing back from I was doing a personal appearance press launch. I was doing a press launch, and I dashed back when Adventures in Space and Time was airing.
Oh, yes,
and I managed to get back here, and I don't think I moved from in front of the TV. I was cross-legged in front of the TV for.
Did you cry as well?
Oh, I was a mess.
Oh, I cried. Yeah.
I was amazed. No, not because of the Matt Smith.
No. Just.
But
yeah.
I was just like, oh, this is so magical. In fact, I showed it to a friend not long ago to get him into the show because they two friends had come to see Time Fracture, but what tends to happen is one is a fan and the partner or the friend is not a fan, so they went, oh, I don't quite like the idea of it now. So actually, just to give you a weird potted history rather than go, here's Pyramids of Mars, is to go to watch Adventures in Time and Space, because it kind of Space and Time. Sorry, Mark, would kill me for that. Space and Time, just because I think that captures the craziness of it all.
Yeah.
So, Adam, I want to talk about your YouTube show and how
bless you, yeah,
how that's going, because I'm obsessed with your YouTube show. I've lost hours to that YouTube show.
That's very kind. Yeah, the series, so the history of Doctor Who viewing figures, it's going well. At the time of we're recording this, I'm nearly finished the video for season 25, so that's good. So funny we mentioned the Chief Clown earlier, because just before we recorded, I'm on the Greatest Show segment, so I'm like, oh, that's funny. But yeah, so the plan is I'll do that, and then hopefully do the season 26, and then amazingly, that's the classic, because when I started this, it was literally, I've always loved like numbers, and then I don't know why, just like, you know, at school, early age, I liked the early math sort of stuff and just all that. So numbers plus Doctor Who is like match made in heaven. So when I learnt this show had number statistics, viewing figures, what's it? So I've always been fascinated by it, and I'd wanted to do something like this for years. But it's like you said earlier about wanting to make, you know, something for YouTube. It wasn't so much, it hadn't been done before, at least not to my knowledge. But I thought, I'm doing a niche of a niche.
Not on
so
YouTube.
like,
I've seen it.
You know.
I've seen those details written down.
Yes,
but I've never. In fact, I seem to. I think it's on the Mind Rubber website. There was like, as they kind of did it up to about series 5, I think, maybe.
They did like the graph or whatever.
The graph,
it was.
yeah, because I was fascinated by that. So I think that's why I went, oh, that's a really clever idea. But the spin that you've put on it is what I really really connected with is, obviously, because you were talking at that point, I probably watched the Tom Baker one first. The omnibus, where it was the whole 7 seasons, was what is on contemporarily opposite it.
Yes.
And I thought that was absolutely fascinating, because they never used to advertise the Tom Baker series very much. It was never on the front cover of the Radio Times, but it was the most popular thing. You know, it was on this huge juggernaut of Saturday Night TV. But it was never advertised in that way. You kind of had to find, you know, I think I had the making of book, and I had things like that, and obviously the Dennis Fisher figures, which, but things like, but you didn't really have merchandise in that way. You didn't have the details like that, or even story listings. I think, and when Doctor Who Weekly came out, that was like, oh my goodness, that was so magical.
Yes, yeah.
In fact, I started with issue 3. And I got issue 1 from somebody, and I didn't have issue. In fact, I never had issue 2 of Doctor Who Weekly, but I brought it for what seems to be a huge amount of money, about £5 in '83 at Longleat at the 20th anniversary. So that was the thing I really wanted. Although it's 4 or 5 years later at that point. It's knowing what was on the other channel, particularly when you go into season 18, because obviously it was top of the ratings, and obviously the ITV strikes, which I don't remember because I was just watching Doctor Who.
Sure.
But I don't remember watching ITV a lot then. I say this to friends now, I was with a load of people over the weekend, and they were saying, we're talking about Doctor Who, and they were saying, oh, we never used to watch ITV because that's, you know, common, rather than BBC. And it was never like that. I don't think in my household it was particularly refrained on watching ITV.
Sure.
Which, if you look at 1979 ITV, yes, it is. It's rough as anything. It's like bawdy stand up compared to the BBC being very polite. If you watch contemporary shows around the time. This is why I think the BBC used to hate Are You Being Served, because that is very much an ITV show, but it's on BBC One. But a huge hit. So they kept it on. Is when it goes to season 18, what swaps is people watching imports because of Star Wars. They started watching Buck Rogers and that's it. Things like the A-Team came out, and that's what kind of before you even get to Coronation Street, you get
it all feels repetitive now. Like I'm going through the McCoy years, and every story I'm like, and it's Coronation Street and Coronation Street And Coronation. Whereas in The Baker, it was almost like something different every week.
Yes.
ITV was...
Yeah, that's the bit, because obviously I wasn't watching that. I would never watch what's on the other channel. So I was but I was aware of what it was. And it was, I think that was part when we were talking about things going out of fashion and how your attitudes changed as a teenager, because a lot of my friends weren't watching Doctor Who, they were watching the A-Team. So now you can also add the extra layer then, obviously being a gay child or gay teenager of the 80s and not being attracted to... I wasn't drawn away by the heteronormative type of program. No offence to the A-Team, but it's very much more, straight boys watch the A-Team type of thing.
Yeah, would you say it tries to come across, it has like, is it trying to be like, what's the word, like macho? Or
it's very, very much. I mean, that was very much that Rambo mid-80s. It's around the era when I actually stepped away from commercial movies and didn't watch. So things like Top Gun and, not so much Dirty Dancing, but a lot of those, Rambo and Top Gun, very, very... hetero presenting
like the muscly men going around, like
not that I dislike muscly guys, but it's in a very jokes aside, but it's very
it's all
quite
presented
aggressive
via that,
and that's when I discovered B movies, because Channel 4 had done a series. BBC Two would show. I've managed to narrow it down to, I think it's 84. BBC Two showed all the Universal horror movies, Frankenstein and Dracula, the classics.
Yeah.
More importantly, Channel 4 did a series called The Worst of Hollywood, and they showed Plan 9 from Outer Space, Wild Women of Wongo, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Basically, everything I've now gone on to host on TV myself came from 1984. And then somebody else tweeted the other day, Jonathan Ross did a series called Wild Hollywood or something like that, which was an interview. So he'd go and interview John Waters at the and then show the premiere of Hairspray in ¡88, and all these different, and Evil Dead, and the director of that, and it was one episode, and somebody else for another episode. And I've forgotten how cool that was becoming, and because you kind of realise retro started kicking in the late 80s into the 90s, and that's why I think I'm the way I am. Partly because of Doctor Who, but also that wave of retro that came in the late 80s, early 90s.
Well, let's talk about that inspiration just quickly then. So, Bunny Galore's movie Nightmares, as you said on Showcase TV, going through all these B-movie horror classics, if that's the right word. I mean, I like movies myself, like retro movies as well, like B-movie stuff. And I think, like, as a hostess of it, how do you think they've sort of survived? Is it the charm of them that's kept them alive?
I think it's, they became... I still remember watching The Wild Women of Wongo is a really good example.
Just a great title, that, isn't it?
Yes, it's such... I just never get bored of saying it. And also, it's not really a horror, and it's not a sci-fi. It's basically kind of like... It's a bit like 1 Million Years BC, the Raquel Welch movie, of the Primitives, but without the dinosaurs. But the Primitives have 1950s set hairstyles and zippers in their leopard skin swimsuits, which is their costumes. I'm obsessed with that film. How do you explain The Wild Women of Wongo? It's. I think I'd never seen bad acting on that scale, and bad editing, and bad jump cuts, and bad framing of the subjects in the camera lens until I saw The Wild Women of Wongo, and it felt so. And the same with the Plan 9 from Outer Space. Unfortunately, Plan 9, I would love to host. Plan 9 was like most famously the worst movie of all time at that point.
Which I disagree with.
It's not the worst movie because it's never boring.
No, oh god, no, it's hilarious.
Because it's hilarious. So there's a lot of other films which are so dull. There's this one called Dustin Hoffman, Sharon Stone movie called Sphere, in the mid-noughties, mid-90s, and that is, that's a great cast, crushingly dull. So I'd rather watch Plan 9 from Outer Space than I would do something that's just plain soullessly dull. I just never thought 25 years later or 30 years later I'd be hosting these movies. It started about 10 years ago. I was looking for a new project. I'd done an online soap opera called Pantry Manor, which is a bit like Crossroads, Acorn Antiques kind of a thing. And that had come out in my Edinburgh Fringe show, and that I had a great time, but it was quite complicated to film that back then. And on YouTube in 2008, it was just me and a bunch of cat videos. There wasn't anybody else, and I left YouTube just as it kind of became YouTube as well, stupidly. So you couldn't earn any money from it back then. And I was looking for a new project, and Elvira had revived her 1981 TV show. So at the moment, we're in the 40th anniversary of Elvira right now.
We are.
So if anyone that doesn't know, Elvira is a horror icon, comedy character icon from the United States. But at that point, I didn't know anything more about Elvira than the movie from 1988. You know, that she's this very, slinky black dress, low cut, big boobs, big hair, sassy, although she's obviously a straight man's fantasy, that she never backs down, and she's a very, very strong woman, even though she's very sexy looking. So obviously that means she's like, gay idol number one. So I just knew her from that movie. And what happens in the beginning of the movie is she's hosting bad movies. I didn't realise, because the show was never shown over here until that revival in 2010, that's what made her famous, was hosting bad movies on late night TV in 1981. When I started to research it, I realised there's thousands of horror hosts in every city in America going back to the 1950s. And it starts with Vampira in 1955. It looks like Morticia from the Addams Family. That only ran for a year, but it kind of set it up. So what you'd have is they would repackage old movies in America on late night TV, but would have a host, like in a Jack and Ori kind of way, sitting in a chair like I am now, and talking to the audience, especially if you're watching alone. It was kind of a bit... So it's before DVD commentaries. It's before podcasts. It's that intimate... It's that kind of intimate friend that you have late at night. I think podcasts would be the closest things you could say about it now, actually. It's like you're talking to friends. But, and there's me in 2012 trying to take TV back to the 70s, basically. So it had gone out of fashion in America, but I did it on YouTube. I did a few episodes on YouTube, and then I found a station that was showing all these movies, and I went, hello, I'm Bunny Galore. Will you let me host these movies? And it kind of started from there, really. First one was April 2012, so nearly at the 10th anniversary. Oh, my word. How is that 10 years? And with the amazing Mr. X, which is like a spooky one. And then I remember I did a little season of films there, but I would do different. I think they all were quite horror. They were quite horror-y ones, those first ones. But I would do like a Shirley Temple movie or a musical or various things. But I think what kind of supplanted at that first Halloween, I did Night of the Living Dead, and we shot on location at this old house. She was Robert Taylor. Rob was Rob Valentine is his stage name. Rob Taylor's his real name. Robert Valentine's house, his parents' house, and he now writes a Big Finish. Weirdly, he was my original cameraman and kind of collaborator on all this insanity. And we did that first Halloween special there, and that's when I kind of did it. I used to just introduce the beginning of the movie and just go. Did a 2-minute introduction, and then they would show the movie. And then I started doing, I'll pop out at like what you should do, which is pop up at the adverts and go, we'll be right back after these messages. And people always think I'm doing it live. I'm like, no, it's filmed like, months ago, and then it's kind of all put together later on. So in fact, and I've just, I did literally the last series just as the Doctor Who Time Fracture closed down. That has gone out already. It went out really quickly. But I remember I've just put it on my Twitter actually, that I'd shot Series 6 just before the pandemic. Because it's so weird, because that went out in the October, I think, and it was so weird to watch it going, if I knew when I was filming this back in February that I'd tried a bit harder, but I would have made it more interesting. But it's so weird, isn't it, that we went through all that, and I look back at like old footage now and go, oh my goodness, I just didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah, and somehow we've all come out the other side. But as you said, 10th anniversary next year of the show, which is really exciting. It's mad, isn't it? I hopefully, and I keep on going. Well, they asked for more, and I hope they ask again next year. And I'll probably pitch. I don't think I've got anything coming up for the end of this year, but I'll pitch probably something to do on the. Oh, I might do. I mean, I've still got time to do a Christmas special. What am I saying? But I'll. There's not that many Christmas movies to go because some things have lapsed back into copyright, like
Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, you can't do.
Has that gone back into copyright? Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, I think Studio Canal have brought Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. I don't know why or how.
I bet they bought that quietly. I bet they kept that quiet.
So it's still public domain in America, so I can still show it in America. But so the episodes that go out over there, they can still go out, but it just can't
see
happen
that.
here, which is a shame. So there's only one other movie called Santa Claus versus the Devil. That's the only other Christmas movie.
Yes.
And I've done that 3 times, so it's like going. I'm running out. I have to make one next.
Yes, that could be it. Santa Claus meets Bunny Galore. There you go.
Actually, I have just shot a little cameo in a movie. I get asked to do a lot of indie films, but they never end up happening. And an actress friend, Charlie Bond, has written and produced. Now the name of the movie is going to be a bit hard. It's quite a long title as well. So, but is it zombie? Cheerleaders versus the zombie boy band. But there's about another few adjectives in that title. Sorry, Charlie. Cool. But I went to film a cameo for that the other day, and that was fun because that's the first time that's ever happened.
That's exciting.
I was like, there we go, tick box. So I'm finally in a it's not zombie cheerleaders because they're not zombies, I don't think. But it's something like that. It's zombie cheerleaders versus werewolf, vampire.
Well, whenever in the future, if you're filming your links, if you ever need someone with big hair, I could be the Bride of Frankenstein. I could.
I meant to say, because obviously this is not a visual thing so much, but the hair is magnificent, I have to say.
Thank you. Regular listeners will probably know what are you talking about, but yeah, no, it's funnily enough, I don't know if I've told this story in the podcast, but it was more out of an annoyance thing because my hair naturally lies very flat. I've never been one of those kids who, some people, I'm jealous of them. Their hair's like always like up here.
Yeah, has a natural. Same. I have to put a lot of stuff in my hair to make it do anything.
Yeah, but I'm partially sighted, and just for me at least, if my hair grows so long that it's like right in front of my eye line, that sends my eyes like panic. They're like, whoa, like something's right there, like what's gonna? And so I used to get motion sick quite a bit. So I started doing it like this mainly out of I was like I can't be fucked basically with having these. I was like I just want it all out my face. I'm gonna stick it all up like this, and then I looked and I was like, yeah, you know what? We'll run with it. I mean, when I started back in 2009, 13-year-olds, so we're talking using wet look hair gel, and it looked a bit shit. But I've evolved over the years. I'd like to think it's gotten better with time, but it's always the first thing every audition. I'm telling you, walk in, whoa, look at your hair. It's like yes.
Well, that's yes. So that is tricky because obviously that's more your brand than
it's tough.
Because as an actor, you kind of have to be a blank page. And obviously it's a bit rich coming from me because I'm not a blank page. I worked out a long time ago that I didn't realise I was doing it, but I kind of created a character that kind of took over and circumvented aging, circumvented casting, because it became its own thing. And I think when you realise that you are the brand is you, you can, but most YouTubers are like, I hate the word influencer, but I guess I am a horror influencer. But
hell yeah,
it becomes your brand is quite important. I just didn't realise I accidentally invented it. So it's that your hair is perfect for the brand of you. Not so great to be a blank page for a casting director because let's face it.
Oh God, absolutely.
Casting directors do not think. Sorry, casting directors, do not think outside. Unless you walk in,
they've got the image in their head, and if you don't fit that image, which is fair enough, whatever. Like that's your prerogative. I have started now recently mainly when I got out of drama school a few years back. Sometimes if my take on the role thought I should have flat hair, I would go in with flat hair. But for roles where I thought no, this character could have stuck up hair, I'd roll with it. But and sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't worked. So it's just that's just this whole industry, isn't it? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. It's
some things you can't panel beat yourself into the best will of the world. You kind of go.
Oh God, absolutely. I mean, my mantra is, as long as, I'm having fun, I'm happy, and I'm earning a bit of money to live, then, hey,
oh
cool.
gosh, yes,
Fine by me.
totally,
So,
same. Yeah, oh my goodness, yes. It was always, which seemed like a really good idea up to 2020, and then it's like,
yeah, then it was like the worst industry to be in.
Then it was like, because my day job is in hair and makeup as well as performing, so I was like, oh, well, this is just the worst choice ever.
Yeah,
but who
would have known? Who would have known? Exactly. Well, I think we'll start to wrap it up there. But I mean, can I just say you've been a fantastic guest to have on. Thank you so much for coming on. Before you do go, though, please feel free to shout out any of your social medias or any upcoming projects you have coming on.
Sure. Well, you can find me on social media or at The Real Bunny Galore on Instagram and at Bunny Galore on Twitter. I think I'm still on Facebook and things. Yeah, Loosely Baked is on YouTube, but if you go to my social medias, there's links to everything on there, on the website and everything's there. I'm popping up a lot. I'm in York, I think over Halloween or just before Halloween at Oktoberfest. And I don't know, and popping up all over the place really lately. So yes, come and say hello if you see me. I'm certainly back at HorrorCon in May. I think that's the first big convention I'm doing again after all this. It's been delayed several times, but I do love HorrorCon in Sheffield, so I'll be there in May, I think it is. But yeah, I'll be at gigs and things like that, or just come and say hi on Twitter or Instagram.
Oh, exciting. Good stuff. And, for listeners who've been tuning in, thank you very much. If you're listening on YouTube, please leave us a like. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We'd love to have you aboard. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, any of those, thank you very much. You can follow, whatever. Basically, the button that should say subscribe, but for some reason they all decide to use a different adjective. Whatever that button is, just click that. That'll be good. New episodes coming every week. So yeah, all that's left to be said then is Bunny Galore, thank you once again for joining me today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And for all of you lot, I'll see you next time.